If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
Kempire is brought to you by
The Kempire After Dark is back, but it's now the villain era. Yes, we are coming to Philadelphia on July 10th at City Winery. Then we're hitting Atlanta on August 5th, DC on August 22nd, then back here in New York City on September 12th. All shows have meet and greets, but a lot of people asking, what can we expect from the Kempire After Dark, the villain era? Well, Kempire After Dark, if you came to those shows, were already a night of hot topics, spilling tea, seeing a whole other side of me. So you can only imagine what the villain era is going to bring out. I'm so excited to bring to you a night of not just hot topics, but us recapping some of your favorite shows from Real Housewives of Atlanta to Real Housewives of Miami, but also talking about Tyler Perry, the Diddler, and so much more. Can't wait to see all of you in Philly, Atlanta, DC, and New York. The New York City show has a special live stream option, so even if you're coming to these shows or if you're not because you're in another city, that is your option. I'll see you guys this summer in a city near you.
You're listening to Kempire here on the Kempire Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Kempire channel, your number one source for pop culture news and music, entertainment, reality TV, and so much more. We were live earlier today reporting to you that Diddy was found not guilty on some of the most serious charges that he was facing, from RICO, from racketeering conspiracy to sex trafficking. But, however, he was found guilty on 2 charges of the Mann Act, transportation for prostitution. We have a lot of updates for you, including his defense team has asked for bail. They're going to have a bail hearing today at 5 p.m. Eastern, but there's just so much to unpack. Media's reaction, bloggers' reaction. We have celebrities that are reacting, including 50 Cent and Aubrey O'Day. There's a lot to unpack, a lot of letters that are being sent to the judge asking for the judge to deny Diddy bail. You guys can weigh in on whether or not he should be denied bail. I do want to emphasize before we get into the nitty-gritty of everything, and I said this during our live earlier this morning when the news broke, Diddy has been acquitted of these particular federal charges. Diddy himself, through his defense team, hasn't denied being abusive to not just his girlfriends, his ex-girlfriends, no matter how you feel about them, but also to employees, abusive, people working around the clock, when this man could literally afford to hire multiple people so that no one had to work around the clock. The jury had one task to do, and I think that's the hard part of why people are so confused at how the jury came to this determination. It was a hard sell from the prosecution, a hard sell in regards to whether or not this was racketeering. A lot of well-seasoned attorneys have said, I don't know if they're going to get him on the RICO charge. And they didn't. Could they have done a better job? Well, we will unpack that because you know Kirsten Brown, who is here 3 times helping us understand what was playing out legally in this case. She will definitely be back very soon so that we can unpack where did the prosecution go wrong? Where did they go right? How did this turn out? How did we end up here? Well, we've talked to you multiple times that a lot of the times these decisions on if someone's going to be found guilty or not guilty will rely on jury selection and then those jury instructions. Remember, those jury instructions that they received were 60 plus pages. 60 plus pages. So despite how you're feeling about the verdict, it should be noted that he is still facing at least at max 20 years in prison for the two charges of the Mann Act. So this is why the prosecution today is fighting. They're rushing to get these legal documents to the judge to keep Diddy in jail. However, you may have seen the title of this video where it says, after the verdict, Diddy turned to his family, reportedly, to sources inside the room, reportedly said to them, "I'm coming home, baby." I don't know if that's the tone that he used, but that's how I'm picturing he said it. So we're going to unpack a lot. So I'm going to give you some more updates. If you missed the video that we did earlier today unpacking the breaking news that Sean Diddy Combs, after weeks and weeks of testimony and no witnesses from his side, it has now been found not guilty of 3 of the charges, the counts that he was facing. The one that a lot of people were watching was the racketeering conspiracy charge, because that was a life in prison sentencing possible. He's not facing that. However, he was found guilty of the Mann Act. Again, that is the Transportation for Prostitution Act. A lot of people speculated from the very beginning. Shout out to our friends over at the Law and Crime Network here on YouTube. They suspected that from the very beginning, that if he is to get off on all the other charges, they definitely think that we would definitely be convicted of the Mann Act charges. For those that are just joining us, they are going to have a bail hearing for Diddy today, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. PST. So we'll keep an eye on that. We probably will go live again once we have some of that information. But there's a lot more that I want to unpack. And shout out to our friends over at NBC News. I wanted to start from the beginning in regards to where we left off, not the beginning, from where we left off earlier today, because there's a lot of stuff happening. As you know, we've been following this case since the beginning, but following it from the studio. Following it from the studio. And I'm so glad that I listened to my instincts and said, even though I'm in New York and I could be there every single day, but I said, there's just so much dark energy around this case. I'm like, because even covering it from here, it's still a lot of dark energy. But I am so happy, especially today, that I decided to protect my peace and report from home. Just come on, one round of... Because I'll tell you this, I don't report on the other stuff that's happening around the case in regards to things that are just not relevant to the case. But it has been a circus inside that court, but also outside that court. And I am so very glad to be reporting to you live from the Kempire studio at home. Just saying. All right. So before we get into any of that, let me just rewind time. There's also, let me show you some of the photos that are coming out from the sketch artist. As you know, there has not been any video, any audio from inside the court. So, but let me just actually bring up to you. Hold on, y'all. It's a lot of talking. Thank you so much. A lot of you are saying, I'm glad you didn't go either. However, I will say this, and I've said this when we were doing our collaborations with Kirsten, there were moments where I was like, it would have been beneficial to be in the court. In regards to those closing arguments, it would have been beneficial for that, just to see them round out all of this. So shout out to those of you that did go, and shout out to all the bloggers, the YouTubers, and the journalists that have been going every single day. Thank you for your service. Someone needed to do it. All right. Let me bring up this photo for you guys so you can see what happened at the moment that he got this verdict. Again, this verdict, I get it. He's happy because literally he was facing life in prison. However, he is still facing at max 20 years for those two charges in regards to the Mann Act. Let me just show you one of the photos that the sketch artist provided. Let me see if I can bring this up over here. So this was Diddy in court, where he has his head on a table. Well, on a chair, on a chair. So some of the sketches are coming out. I have to say, Mama Combs definitely had a better wig today, y'all. Look, this is where we can get some levity in regards to some of this reporting. Mama Combs definitely had her good wig on today. All right, let me show you. Mama Combs had her good wig on today, y'all. All right? The good wig was on. All right. That was Mama Combs. The family has now left the courthouse, but they will be going back, as I said before, they will be going to back to court for a bail hearing at 5 p.m. We do have some of the letters from Cassie in regards to asking that the judge deny him bail, along with Deontay Nash. All right, so we're going to get into that in just a second. Let me just, Lord, there's just so many updates in regards to this from earlier today from our friends over at NBC News. Let me see. Okay. All right. And Cassie Ventura's attorney is speaking out as well. Let me see. Okay, so let's start from here in regards to what's playing out. So the verdict is a massive victory for Combs, according to NBC News reporters. They said NBC News' Chloe Melas described today's verdict as a, quote, massive victory for Combs, considering the music mogul was facing life in prison. The jury found that Combs was not guilty of sex trafficking, which has a mandatory 15-year minimum in prison. So keep that in mind. What he was found guilty of in regards to the Mann Act, the max is 10. He has 2 guilty verdicts for that, so now it's a max of 20 years. So they said the S trafficking, which has a mandatory 15-year minimum in prison, and not guilty of running a criminal enterprise. It was such an emotional moment for Combs' legal team that Tenny Garagos, one of his attorneys, was seen wiping tears. Prosecutors, they painted Combs as somebody that was beating women, which they owned up to. Please pay attention to this part, because I know there are people celebrating this win. It is a win for him, but it's still, for those that are going to come out and be like, free Diddy and be celebratory, yes, he has won in regards to these charges, but he still is now accused of being an abusive person to his girlfriends and to his employees. These people are still considered victims. Especially because also within these federal charges, he was convicted of 2 of the counts. Keep that in mind before we start saying insensitive things. So they said prosecutors, they painted Combs as somebody that was beating women, which they owned up to, but running a criminal enterprise, and that he S-trafficked 2 of his former girlfriends, Cassie Ventura and also Jane, who testified under a pseudonym. This is undoubtedly a massive blow to the prosecution, who brought 34 witnesses, Melas said outside the courtroom. Melas said that being in court every day, she could see that the government's argument did not convince some jurors. And remember, they were deadlocked on the RICO charge yesterday. They came into court at 9 o'clock this morning, and they came to the conclusion 52 minutes later. 52 minutes later. They said that you could tell that there were several of them that were not buying what the prosecution was putting forth in their arguments. I saw some roll their eyes. I saw some even fall asleep. Some clearly not buying what the prosecution was saying in their closing arguments, she explained. Okay. NBC continues, says jurors were stone-faced and didn't appear to look at Combs as they delivered a mixed verdict that seemed to please the defendant. I'll show you a picture of Diddy again in court. At one particular point, he had prayer hands, so I'll show you that picture in a second. They said that the defendant nodded to the jurors as Judge Subramanian thanked them for their service. Combs' loved ones in the court included his 6 children, Dana Tran, and the mother of his youngest child. Combs' family members, including his mom and son Justin, left the court without stopping for the crowd of awaiting media. They ended up going back. A crowd of supporters surrounded the family's waiting van, shouting, "Free Puff, free Puff, free Puff." So Cassie Ventura's attorney, Doug Wigdor, the attorney representing Cassie Ventura, told reporters outside the courthouse that his team is pleased that Combs has, quote, finally been held accountable. Again, remember, he's still facing a max of 20 years for the Mann Act charges. Of course, we would have liked to have seen a conviction on the sex crimes in RICO, but we understand that beyond a reasonable doubt is a high standard, Wigdor said. We're just pleased he still faces substantial jail time. So when asked how his father was feeling, Combs' son Christian said, "Great," and his daughters added, "Good, happy." As Comey explained, Combs could serve up to 20 years. The family's joy faded slightly, although they still looked happy as they left the court. "Thank you, love you," Combs told his loved ones in court as he was led away for at least a few more hours of custody. For those that are just joining us, they will be having a bail hearing to see whether or not, because of course his defense is asking that he be released on bail. There will be a bail hearing today at 5 p.m. Eastern. So Ramal, the hometown Heat Brown, a former hip-hop disc jockey at 105.3 KJams in Tulsa, Oklahoma, believes that, quote, "Depending on how many years he gets, I can see Diddy returning to the music industry without much backlash. He won't be as celebrated as he was, but he's powerful and has connections," he added, noting that music fans could be forgiving. But then there are those who believe that the music executive still has legal troubles ahead. The reality is this is far from over. Diddy is still facing dozens, more than dozens, of civil lawsuits that he'll have to contend with. So he's going to be in a very long legal fight, said Shamira Ibrahim, a freelance culture writer. The biggest impact from the case is how eyes were opened to how Diddy weaponized his position in the music industry to abuse women and to put people into insecure positions, and that won't go away anytime soon. They continue in regards to NBC's reporting. They said the defense asked for Combs' release from prison and for him to be allowed to live in his Miami home while noting that his plane was already sequestered. I believe his private jet is in Maui, they said. I don't know why it's there. I don't know if you guys remember this. I did talk about this, I think, with Kirsten, that his plane, they've been renting it out, and he's already made millions off of renting out his private jet while he's been in prison, reportedly, I'll say. NBC legal analyst Kirsten Gibbons, Feden, said, "I think there's a high likelihood that he walks today. Keep in mind what the jury found," Feden said, noting he was found not guilty of the most serious charges of sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy. So they really ripped out the threat element. They ripped out the violent element. They ripped out the violent parts of what the prosecution used as the main thing to keep them in bail, Feden explained. So this is important for us to know. Again, there is going to be a 5 p.m. bail hearing. She's saying because he's been acquitted of those violent and threatening charges, this could open the door for him to walk today until his sentencing. With his plane sequestered with him and being in Miami and the fact that he is a celebrity where he can't really go unnoticed, there is a high likelihood that the judge may release him on bail today, she added. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but we got to, okay? So Combs' supporters calls verdict wonderful and believes charges were, quote, exaggerated. Standing outside the courthouse, Ceduin Edwards said today's verdict was, quote, wonderful. Edwards, who's 49 years old, has attended the trial at least 15 times over the last few weeks. He arrived at the courthouse at 2:15 a.m. this morning. 2:15 a.m. this morning today to secure a spot in the main courtroom. He says, "I'm a black man. He's a black man. We're both from New York City," Edwards said. "And if it could happen to him, in my opinion, it could happen to anyone. I believe they tried to railroad him. They tried to target him, and they think they tried to take him down," he added, describing Combs' charges as trumped up and exaggerated. Edwards felt that Cassie Ventura and Jane were willing participants rather than victims and that their stories were inconsistent. If what Puffy was doing was racketeering, everyone's racketeering. That's in that lifestyle, flying women out, doing drugs, and things like that, he said. If he could speak with Combs directly, Edwards said that he would tell him to get help. The man definitely has a lot of problems, a drug problem. He definitely has a drug problem, Edwards said. And I think he's going to do that. I think that he's going to slow down to the lifestyle he had and seek help. Okay. So speaking of some of the people that testified, you know, Cassie Ventura, one of the victims, testified. Jane, who testified under a pseudonym, testified. There was supposed to be another victim, Gina, a woman who 6 years ago did an interview with Tasha K and claimed a lot of what Cassie had claimed, but she did this way before Cassie had claimed this. Okay? So I want to play a clip for you. If you hear earlier, I played this clip for you. Gina has been found. Miraculously, she was caught by paparazzi. Backgrid, for those that don't understand, Backgrid a lot of times are a outlet that celebrities pay to be their paparazzi. Because how did Backgrid find Gina in a Whole Foods parking lot? Just saying. But she was supposed to be testifying on the prosecution side, and then they ended up removing her as one of the people testifying. Would her testimony made a difference? I don't know. I can't say that it would have. But Backgrid caught up with her.
Hi, Gina. How you doing? I have a quick question for you. You think Diddy's going to win this trial? Before you go, that's what I want to know. If Diddy does win this trial, do you think your life will be threatened in any kind of way?
No.
You don't think so? You think everything will be safe? Because the girl, Aubrey O'Day, she said that if Diddy wins, she's going to leave the country.
I mean, he never did anything dangerous to me. I'm not scared.
You're not scared? Okay, well,
We have to pause there. When she says he's never done anything dangerous to me, that's not what she was saying 6 years ago. 6 years ago, in an interview with Tasha K, she was claiming that he was pretty damn dangerous. Allegedly, I'll say. But she said that in the interview.
I mean, he never did anything dangerous to me. I'm not scared.
you're not scared? Okay. Aubrey O'Day.
You know, we're body language experts. Pay attention when she says, oh, he never did anything dangerous to me. She moves her hair. Pay attention when she's looking away. She's not looking directly at him. Pay attention to the body language now. Let me go back.
I have a quick question for you. You think Diddy's going to win?
I'm not going to Whole Foods. The paparazzi's at Whole Foods, I'm not going to Whole Foods.
Trial? Before you go, that's what I want to know. If Diddy does win this trial, do you think your life will be threatened in any kind of way?
No.
You don't think so? You think everything will be safe? Because the girl, Aubrey O'Day, she said that if Diddy wins, she's going to leave the country.
I mean, he never did anything dangerous to me. I'm not scared.
You're not scared? Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Very convenient timing. Mind you, no one has seen Gina during this entire trial. Conveniently when the jury's already deliberating. So at this particular point, there's no way they're going to bring her in. It's like, oh, we found her, now she can testify. No, at this particular point, it's not. And yes, the interview with Gina is still on Tasha K's YouTube channel. It's still up there. Literally, I saw it yesterday. Y'all said the bag is empty. It definitely seems like this was a planned meeting with the paparazzi and very interesting questions to be asked. Speaking of Aubrey O'Day, Aubrey was on social media reacting live to the verdict. Let's take a look at that.
Cassie Ventura. So that is obviously an enormous win.
Oh my God.
The jury did not
guilty on Cassie, not guilty on Rico. No way that Jane is going to be guilty.
There was the video, of course, where he was.
Oh, this makes me physically ill.
Lobby.
Sure.
And, you know, the prosecution strategy with showing that video, or with knowing that video was going to be shown to the jury, was, well, domestic abuse.
Wolf is silent.
They said, look, domestic abuse happened. But
Wolf is silent.
Right.
There was no racketeering, and it seems like the jury.
If we're talking about count 2 here, the forcible sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura, that means the jury has concluded there was
Cassie
force
probably feels
or
so
fraud or
horrible.
coercion. involved in that. It could still be that the jury finds,
Ronnie,
yes, a person
I'm gonna vomit.
was moved across state lines for the purpose of prostitution. Yes. That's count 3.
Okay, I'm
which
getting some other news.
Oh, please.
So that was Aubrey, because Aubrey had a lot of people say Aubrey has kept her foot on Diddy's neck even during the making of the Band-Aid. She's been doing a podcast here in New York talking about this case as well. All right. And she also did an interview with Entertainment Tonight that she says, depending on this verdict, I know a lot of people are going to be heading out of the country. B. Glam, we're going to read Deontay Nash's letter as well, because there are letters. Matter of fact, we'll segue into that. Thank you for that. We'll get into what the hold on, y'all. Please hold. The people are saying in regards to the letters that they sent to the judge to deny bail. There is going to be a bail hearing at 5 p.m. today. Let me just pull up those letters. First of all, okay, before we get into that, so this first letter that I'm going to read to you is from Diddy's defense team, okay? This is the letter to have him removed from detention, okay? So they write this motion. They said, Dear Judge Subramanian, Mr. Combs moves for release on appropriate conditions pursuant to blah, 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 pending his sentencing proceeding. Given the jury's clear verdict acquitting Mr. Combs of the RICO conspiracy and trafficking counts, continued detention of Mr. Combs is inappropriate. As these proceedings have demonstrated, and as we told the court from the outset of this case, Mr. Combs came to New York to surrender in order to defend against the government's charges because he was, quote, committed to showing his innocence. Since his arrest and detention on September 17th, 2024, so Diddy's been in jail for almost a year, Mr. Combs has obeyed the court, respected these proceedings, and demonstrated model behavior at the MDC. And today, the jury unambiguously rejected the government's allegations that Mr. Combs ran a years-long criminal enterprise or engaged in trafficking, the core of the government's case. Mr. Combs stands convicted of 2 Mann Act accounts, and his sentencing exposure is substantially lower than when the government initially sought detention. The court should release Mr. Combs on the proposed conditions, and then they go through all of that. Of course, he'll be in his Miami home. They have his passport, those kinds of things. So the defense is asking for him to be released. So there will be a hearing today at 5 p.m. However, of course, there are some letters that have been sent, including Deontay Nash and a letter from Cassie Ventura's lawyer. So let's go through that. Sorry, y'all, I had lunch, so I need to eat before I come live. But I try not to because of this. There we go. So this is a letter from Douglas Wigdor, Cassie Ventura's attorney. And this is very short and to the point. Dear Judge Subramanian, we write as counsel for Cassandra Ventura to respectfully request that the court deny Mr. Combs to be released pending his sentencing on his 2 convictions under blah, blah, blah. Pursuant to the Bail Reform Act, detention is mandatory post-conviction on these charges. So he's citing actual law. He says, pursuant to the Bail Reform Act, detention is mandatory post-conviction on these charges. And Ms. Ventura believes that Mr. Combs is likely to pose a danger to the victims who testified in this case, including herself, as well as to the community. We thank the court for its time and attention to this matter. Respectfully submitted, Douglas Wigdor. So that's what Cassie Ventura's attorney had to say. But you remember Cassie's friend and stylist who also testified, Deontay Nash, sent a longer letter. So, dear Judge Subramanian, I'm writing to express my grave concern over the prospect of Sean Combs being released from custody. While I appreciate the fairness you have shown throughout this proceeding, I feel compelled to be unequivocal about the danger he poses to the public and to the individuals who have risked everything by coming forward. Mr. Combs has a long, well-documented history of violent, coercive, and retaliatory behavior. Over the years, he has repeatedly escaped meaningful accountability, and each time this has only reinforced his sense of impunity. If he is released now, I have no doubt he will see it as yet another license to continue intimidating, threatening, and harming people who challenge or expose him. Many of us have firsthand knowledge of the fear he instills in those around him. I can say without hesitation that he is a serious and immediate threat to victims, witnesses, and the broader community. His pattern of violence, particularly while engaged in the trafficking of individuals for prostitution, combined with unchecked substance abuse, makes it clear that he's not ready to re-enter society safely or responsibly. To release Mr. Combs without substantial consequence would undermine the integrity of this process and send a dangerous message that wealth and influence can shield someone indefinitely from accountability. It will also endanger those who cooperated with this investigation under subpoena. So remember, when he says this, meaning that they came forward because they were subpoenaed, like they had to come forward or they would be arrested or face consequences. So he says that it will also endanger those who cooperated with this investigation under subpoena, who are already living in fear of retaliation. I urge you in the strongest possible terms to prioritize the safety of victims and witnesses over any consideration of leniency. Mr. Combs has had countless opportunities to change, and he has chosen instead to escalate his harmful conduct. Allowing him back into the community now would be a profound mistake. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to protecting the public from those who repeatedly demonstrate they are unwilling to respect the law. Respectfully, Deontay Nash. This was very well written. Will it be convincing to the judge? That remains to be seen. Guys, if you're just joining us, we're giving you an update since this morning when we went live and told you that Diddy has been found not guilty on the most serious charges, including RICO conspiracy and S trafficking, which he faced a minimum of 15 years for the S trafficking and a maximum of a life for the RICO charges. He was found not guilty, but he was found guilty on the Mann Act charges. That's the transportation for prostitution. He's facing a max of 20 years in prison. However, his defense team is fighting for him to be released today from the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, where he's been since September of last year. But we have more to unpack. Let me see what NBC is updating us in regards to this. Again, there's a 5 p.m. hearing, about 2 hours here in New York City for the bail. All right, so U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, released a joint statement with the Homeland Security Investigations Field Office following the Combs verdict. The statement thanked victims, prosecutors, and investigators, but did not address the acquittal on the highest counts. The statement recognized that sex crimes are, quote, all too present in society, and that prosecution requires, quote, brave victims to come forward and tell their harrowing stories. Victims endure gut-wrenching physical and mental abuse, leading to lasting trauma, the statement said. New Yorkers and all Americans want this scourge stopped and perpetrators brought to justice. So that was a statement from the Southern District of New York. And we've talked about this. We've been one of the people to point out to you that the Southern District of New York has a conviction rate of like 95%. I mean, here, technically, they still got a conviction, but not on the highest of charges. So, what will sentencing process be like? According to NBC News' reporting, they said from here, the defense and prosecution will submit to the court what they believe is an appropriate sentence for Combs. Attorney Misty Maris told NBC's Laura Jarrett that Combs' team will likely ask for no more jail time, considering the time served, and the prosecution will likely ask for closer to a maximum recommendation, which is 10 years for each charge, which would be a total of 20 years. From there, a probation department will review the case and make a recommendation based on various factors, including the fact that this is the first time that he's been convicted, not charged, first time that he's been convicted of this type of charge, and his behavior behind bars. The judge is really limited in those sentencing guidelines. There's discretion up to that 10 years, but they're going to use those guidelines in order to really pin down what would be appropriate under the circumstances, Maris said. So here's the other element. I was texting with Kirsten about this because we were talking about the possibility of how much time. Thank you so much, Fahrenheit, in regards to it. So it reads like scourge. Thank you. You know, words. We're learning new words, especially legal terms. One of the things I pointed out to Kirsten, because she completely forgot about this too. Remember, Donald Trump at one particular point said that no one has reached out to him in regards to giving a pardon. And he said he had not been following the Diddy case. He did talk about how Diddy really did not support his bid for president and said some things about him running and supported the other side. However, he did say that it wasn't off the table. So do I see Diddy chumming up to DT to possibly get pardoned and never see another day in jail? Very possible. Money talks. Power talks. So according to NBC, they said because Combs was convicted of federal charges, President Donald Trump could theoretically pardon him. Combs and Trump had a friendly relationship before the real estate tycoon entered politics. And the president suggested to reporters a few weeks ago that he be open to considering a pardon, meaning that money talks. Allegedly. I don't know. He didn't say it like that. He says, well, nobody's asked, Trump told reporters at the end of May, but I know people are thinking about it. I know they're thinking about it. I think people have been very close to asking. First of all, I'd look at what's happening, and I haven't been watching it too closely, although it's certainly getting a lot of coverage. Probably mad that he's not getting all this coverage. He says, I haven't seen him. I haven't spoken to him in years. He said that the music mogul used to really like me a lot. But I think when I ran for politics, he sort of that relationship busted up. I don't know what the language that we're using here. From what I read, I don't know. He didn't tell me that, but I'd read some little bit nasty statements in a matter of all of a sudden. This is our president. I'm reading this verbatim, and I'm like, wait, is that word supposed to be there? Is this a typo? But I remember seeing the video. No, this is how he said it. So Trump said, so I don't know. I would certainly look at the facts. He means this, y'all. The facts. He will look at the facts. He says, I would certainly look at the facts if I think somebody was mistreated. Whether they like me or don't like me, it wouldn't have any impact. Do we really believe that? Do we really believe that? And here's the thing. I could see Diddy chumming up to Trump, even coming out publicly and supporting Trump. I could see him doing that because at this point, he's already been painted as this abuser and people are already writing him off. So he's like, what? He sees his people like Snoop and Nelly. Snoop was just honored at the BET Awards. So he could see, like, I ain't got nothing to lose. What do you want, Trump? What do you want? I can see it. And it could be, I want money, or I want you to support me. Or it could just simply be, I want you to come out publicly and say that you support this presidency and my big, beautiful bill. It could be that. I would not be shocked. So even NBC News is reporting that possibly we could see a pardon from Trump. So he might still not, even if he is convicted and they give him 15, 20 years in prison, it's very possible that Trump could pardon him. I'm sure the conversations are probably happening now. They probably were waiting for the verdict. Yeah, they're probably waiting for this verdict. So NBC. What's NBC? NBC. Two men with opposing views on Combs' conviction screamed at each other outside the courthouse this morning, arguing over the severity of Combs' actions. I'm telling you, it's a circus outside the court. One man in a denim jacket and sunglasses questioned a man in a red shirt and bucket hat on whether Combs is going to prison and whether Combs is going to prison. Okay. The man in the denim yelled that he beat her. The man in the red said, it doesn't matter. The man in denim shouted, he beat her, he kicked her. We saw the video footage. The jury had showed the video footage. Again, we have video footage of this. So Ventura testified that Combs beat her on multiple occasions, and text messages showed that she confronted him several times over the matter. After he attacked her at a Los Angeles hotel in 2016, Ventura wrote to Combs that she was not a rag doll, she was somebody's child, according to messages entered into evidence. So here's the thing, and we're going to talk about this because NBC is reporting on this, because normally I would ignore this, but NBC is reporting on what's been happening outside the courtroom. So NBC reports this. Amid several journalists sporting NYPD press credentials outside the courthouse, an army of influencers competed for the same story. Among them was Los Angeles-based YouTuber Armand Wiggins, who has more than 285,000 followers and has been chronicling the trial from the courthouse since it began roughly 2 months ago. Wiggins declined to say how he felt about today's verdict, saying that he tries to maintain a level of independence. But for him and other influencers out here today, the end of the trial was nothing short of victorious. Saying, we changed the face of media, we changed the face of how news gets out, Wiggins said. It was a fight in the beginning because a lot of the times people don't respect the new media. But I'm one of those people who was willing to fight with traditional media because we do numbers. Wiggins said that he began covering the trial. He's gained about 60,000 new followers on YouTube and nabbed several radio and TV appearances, including TMZ and News Nation. He says that this is just the very beginning. At some point, the courts will have to adjust to the change and make credential spaces for influencers, he said, because at this point, we've infiltrated the judicial system. However, you may have seen video footage on social media where there were supporters, including Armand, and being poured baby oil over them. Here's the thing. And we don't normally report on other YouTubers unless it crosses over into celebrity news and pop culture news. And the reason why I've emphasized the lack of sensitivity, we literally saw that Young Miami, once a girlfriend of Diddy, posted today this image. Let me actually show this to you. Please hold. Let me see if I can pull this up, if I have it here. This image that she posted on her Instagram story, which is still there, at least right before I went live. Because we have to keep in mind, although he has been acquitted of these RICO charges and S trafficking charges, we have been shown in court evidence that this man has committed domestic violence, has broke the law. So celebrations or whatever you're doing, you need to be mindful of you're celebrating the freedom of someone that still has broken the law, still is abusive to women and employees, not even just women, men and women. All right, do I have this here? Let me show you what Young Miami posted on her Instagram story, which I thought was quite tasteless. Let me see if I can pull this up for you guys. Hold on. There we go. All right. And I'm not going to show you what was happening outside the courtroom. I'm just going to tell you that there were people dancing around, throwing baby oil on each other, shirtless, rubbing baby oil, laughing, kikiing. We also have to think about the optics of this. There are victims watching this. There are victims. We just read to you a letter from a victim saying that they're scared that he's going to be released and be retaliatory against them for testifying. Okay, let me see. Let me see if I can bring this up. Hold on, y'all. Let me just bring this up here. Okay. So here you can see this is what Young Miami posted on her Instagram story. First of all, I know Justin Bieber has come out and said that he is not a victim of Diddy. However, people have during this time called up a lot of different video footage, okay, where it looks like Bieber could be a victim. So Young Miami posted this. And a lot of people are believing that this is her signaling the news, because remember, this was posted around the time the news came out that he was acquitted of the most serious charges. All right. So again, I'm just saying that people just need to be mindful and respectful that there are real victims, because no matter the determination, even though in this determination of this case, 2 of those charges where they're saying that he broke the Mann Act, these people are still victims. So any tacky behavior outside the courtroom is disrespectful to the court, to what was just decided, to the victims. So that is what NBC is reporting that. What I will say I agree with Armand is that, and again, dancing outside the courthouse and being sprayed in baby oil is one of the reasons why they will not take YouTubers and bloggers and influencers seriously when reporting on these stories. Because what you will see, the difference between journalists and us it's how we report on these topics, and that we're not making light of these topics. Yes, and a lot of people are like, oh, don't be biased. We have the privilege because I never claim to be a journalist. I will not start claiming to be a journalist. Okay? But there is a clear difference on how journalists handle these stories. They don't show their opinion. They don't share their opinion. But they're also not outside the courtroom spraying baby oil and dancing around about this. No matter what side you might be on, there's still a level of integrity. There's still a level of professional in that one should conduct themselves when covering a case like this, if you would like to be taken seriously in these spaces. Period. All right. They then I showed you a picture of Janice Combs coming out the court, right? I showed you this picture. Janice Combs coming out the court, very, very happy with the verdict. Speaking of celebrities reacting to the verdict, someone else has reacted. 50 Cent, as you know, he's doing a Diddy documentary. I wonder what this means for the documentary, though. I mean, yes, as I said to you before, he is abusive. 50 Cent has been accused of being abusive. And I said, Netflix, y'all need to separate yourselves from this, because he's not the person to be producing about people being abused. So 50 Cent chimed in on social media saying in the caption, Diddy beat the Rio, I guess he meant Rico, that boy a bad man, and in clapping emojis, he like the gay John Gotti. Okay. All right. So in the findings, Combs not guilty in counts 2 and 4, the trafficking of former girlfriends Cassie Ventura and Jane, jurors essentially said that they don't believe that there was proof beyond a reasonable doubt that they were coerced or forced into sex acts. Both counts carried a minimum of 15-year sentences and possibly life, so Combs' acquittal over those charges was a huge victory. The former girlfriends testified that they felt they had no choice but to go to hotels and homes to perform in freak-offs in which they'd had sex with other men as Combs watched or recorded them. Combs was convicted in counts 3 and 5, the Mann Act, transportation of the women. The jurors essentially agreed with prosecutors that Combs paid male S-workers to fly around the country to have sex with his girlfriends. The mixed verdict was welcomed by Combs' supporters, who danced in celebration with baby oil outside the courtroom. After a shirtless man cut a rug outside federal court to show his joy for Combs, a woman in a bikini. If you've seen some of the footage, you probably will know who this woman is. She would scream all kinds of obscenities, even at Diddy's kids as they were piling into their Sprinter to leave court. And she was like, would you throw baby oil on me? She was just horrendous things that she was saying outside the court and in front of these kids. So they said she removed her wig while a man drizzled baby oil on her from a nearby ledge. Combs' use of baby oil in various sex acts was a frequent topic of testimony. And also, let's keep in mind, possibly triggering to the victims in this case. Remember, there are convictions here. A large police contingent moved into the streets around the federal court with crowd-controlling barricades going up. Word Street was blocked off to traffic as Combs' fans and onlookers added to the chaotic scene. They appear to be waiting for Combs' defense team and perhaps the defendant himself to appear at some point this afternoon. As I've said to you before, at 5 p.m. Eastern, there will be a bail hearing. All right, let's see. They said how Combs' verdict could affect his civil cases. While Combs' federal trial has reached a verdict, he still faces a deluge of lawsuits. Defense attorney Misty Maris said those cases will go on and Combs won't have the same Fifth Amendment rights he had in the criminal case. In the civil cases, he can be compelled to testify if brought to trial. The fact that he's not guilty on many of these charges, that's going to be something to the defense in those civil actions are going to raise. They're going to say that this pattern, that a lot of these civil lawsuits allege that there's a pattern of conduct. Well, look at this criminal case. There's been a determination. That being said, it's not binding on any of those, so those can continue. She also noted that the standards in civil and criminal courts are different. Remember OJ? OJ was acquitted criminally, but he was liable civilly. So there is a difference. She also noted that the standards in civil and criminal courts are different. In criminal court, the prosecution must prove charges beyond a reasonable doubt. In a civil court, it's called preponderance of evidence. We'll talk about this with Kirsten as well. Maris said he can be found liable or not guilty, and the result of that is civil damages, meaning money, not jail time. And then you could also cite the Cassie case that he settled for $20 million, which was revealed during this federal trial. When asked if he could plead the Fifth and say that he doesn't want to do anything to incriminate himself, Maris said, at this point, the only time you could see the Fifth being pled is when there's a real risk of criminal prosecution. So as it relates to these charges, no. If it relates to potential drug issues, stuff like that, yes, I could see that there would be maybe an argument, but you could get a lot less of a lot less rights as a defendant in a civil case than you do in a criminal. Okay. Guys, if you're just joining us, we're giving you some more updates since this morning. You know, we had our live where we broke the news that Diddy had been acquitted of the most serious charges that he was facing, including trafficking and the RICO conspiracy, where he was facing life in prison. However, he has been convicted on 2 counts in regards to the Mann Act, and he's facing a maximum of 20 years. Do me a favor, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to like the video. It's an easy and free way of supporting not just my channel, but other channels as well. Here, be sure to keep liking the video. I will drop the call link for our members first, and then for the live chat for those that want to weigh in and share their thoughts on some of these updates. As I said before, at 5 p.m., there will be a bail hearing on whether or not Diddy will be released today from police custody. So today's live is brought to you by our friends over at Factor Meals. On a day like today, Factor Meals is going to save my day, but it's also the summer. Who wants to be in the kitchen cooking? Not me. So Factor Meals has you covered. Summer is here, more sun, more light, more time to do all the things that make summer so special. And the number one thing you don't want to be doing all summer, spending hours cooking inside. That's where Factor comes in. Factor's chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals are ready in just 2 minutes. Take the hassle out of eating. So, of course, you know I've gotten you a deal. But before we get to your deal, don't forget they have everything from keto meals, protein plus meals for those that are pumping iron in the gym, and also calorie smart meals. All right. Get started at factormeals.com/Kempire50 off and use code Kempire50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code Kempire50 off at factormeals.com/Kempire50 off for 50% off plus free shipping. Factormeals.com/Kempire50 off. More information on Factor Meals will be available in the description. Shout out to our Kings Guards. I know this is not an easy job for them, so please show love to them in the building. We got got Foxy in the building. We got Philly John in the building. Thank you. We appreciate you. And shout out to our members as well. Matter of fact, members, I'm going to drop the call link for you guys again on the post tab here on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitch or Twitter, hey, what's going on Twitch and Twitter? I am not live on TikTok like I normally would be, but that's okay. Hold on, y'all. Let me go over here because I have some more that I want to play from Law and Crime as well. All right, before we do that, let me drop this call-in link for our members because I probably will go live again once we have a determination in regards to whether or not he will be released from jail. Diddy, for those that don't know, that is a possibility today. There's a bail hearing at 5 p.m. Eastern. Okay. All right. I did that. Let me continue in regards to what they're reporting. So they said, according to NBC News, they said while Combs supporters celebrated outside the federal courthouse in downtown Manhattan, others expressed disappointment over the case online. Many on X posted that they were disappointed but not surprised at today's verdict. Some felt that the prosecution's case presented a weak case on the top charges, while others noted that the jury's majority, being men, might have hurt the case. What do you guys think? One user wrote that his acquittal on the top charges is, quote, a representation how evil our system is to women. Another person wrote that it's clear Diddy is a criminal. He committed domestic violence, physical and sexual assault, the user wrote, but they didn't seek those charges, and so he won't have to pay for those crimes. Points are being made. So I showed you this photo of Diddy in court. Well, this is a sketch, not a photo, but a sketch of Diddy in court when the verdict was being read. They said Combs was on his knees in the courtroom with his head down in a chair, seemingly praying after avoiding life in prison on the highest charges in his case. Okay. All right. Hold on. What's going on? Oh, God. This is such a New York portion of the story. Screams erupted from outside the downtown Manhattan courthouse, this time from the press. Barricades did little to stop a rat from making its way through the large contingent of reporters waiting outside the courthouse, causing a brief moment of confusion and a bit of levity. "Rico's the rat's name," yelled a person, referring to Combs' racketeering charge. I don't understand why our rat problem here in New York has gotten worse. Like, they've made so many changes in regards to trying to mitigate that. It's just gotten worse. I feel like I don't know if I told you guys this story. I was on my way to Pilates last week, and I saw a rat. It's during the daytime. A lot of times during the day, you don't see the rats. It's at night. A rat was running up alongside the street, and then I guess it wanted to get to its home, so it ran in front of me, and I was like, oh! Sorry. I mean, it's the most New York City thing ever to happen. I'm surprised they're even reporting on it. They also talked about Aubrey O'Day's reaction, which we played for you guys already. But the reason why you're here is you see the title of here. When Diddy was basically acquitted on the major charges, he turned around to his family and said, "I'm coming home, baby." Take a look at this report.
John Combs was visibly overcome with emotion. His feet were shaking under the table as the verdict was being read, and he then got down on the ground, kneeling in prayer when he found out that he had been acquitted on the most serious charges, racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. He turned to his family and he said, "I'm coming home, baby." And there were loud cheers and applause.
Why would he say he's coming home? Remember, at this particular point, he still has been charged not charged. He's been convicted of 2 counts of the Mann Act. Him saying this to his family before this bail hearing, which is still very possible, as we reported to you based on what NBC is reporting. What you mean you coming home?
He had been acquitted on the most serious charges, racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking. He turned to his family and he said, "I'm coming home, baby." And there were loud cheers and applauses in the courtroom. We know that his family has been here to support him almost every single day of this trial. They actually just walked out of the golden doors of this federal courthouse here in Lower Manhattan just a couple of minutes ago. And there are a lot, you can't see now because there's a bus here, but there are a lot of supporters here out here for him. Of course, people who also weren't so happy about this verdict. There's a lot of bloggers that have been covering this trial since day one, as well as all the media. We have been out here for almost 2 months at this point. Court is now adjourned for the day, but things are not over because the judge still has to weigh whether or not Combs will be released as early as today. That's what his defense attorneys are asking for, but prosecutors are arguing against that. So they both have several hours. The judge wants letters back from them making their cases at around 1 o'clock, and then we will potentially hear later today whether or not he will be released, Diane.
As I told you before, they will have a bail hearing today here in New York at 5 p.m. Eastern. We will probably go live again. I do want us to take a listen to what Law and Crime was reacting to today's verdict and why we're in this space in regards to how we ended up here when it comes to the convictions and the acquittals. All right. Let's take a listen to what Law and Crime. Please be sure to follow them. As always, we're utilizing this under fair use to break down and examine some of their reporting.
What is your reaction, especially on this count one racketeering conspiracy? Sean Combs not guilty.
Look, this is a win for Sean Combs. This is a big victory. No matter how you look at this case, there was almost no chance he was going to be acquitted of the transportation for the purposes of prostitution counts. Now, when you looked at all the evidence, all the records, all the documents with regard to those counts, it was hard to imagine how he would have been acquitted of those charges. The fact that he was acquitted of all of the most serious charges is a big win. And let's talk for a moment about the racketeering charge. Yesterday they were so incapable of reaching a unanimous verdict. They said that people, I forget the exact wording about the language that they used to talk about the divide on the jury. And then they come in and within an hour, they've got a unanimous verdict on it. It just shows you that judges sending the jurors back can work. Jurors will tell the judge, we're hopelessly deadlocked. The judge will say, go back. Well, in this case, it was pretty easy. But look, headline is, this is a big win for Sean Combs.
Absolutely. Unpersuadable is what they said yesterday in the 4 o'clock hour before they go home. And then 9:52 this morning, less than an hour into deliberations, they have a unanimous verdict. Dan, what was it, in your opinion, Cassie Ventura's testimony? I remember Elizabeth talking about just how emotional it was in the courtroom when she was on the stand. And yet, not guilty is the verdict the jury finds. What is it about the defense that apparently spoke to the jury where they felt that she was not a victim of sex trafficking?
Right. I mean, look, you needed coercion and force, right? And I think that there was enough consensual activity, consensual relationships between Jane and Cassie, such that the jurors didn't feel that there was proof beyond a reasonable doubt that this was sex trafficking, even though you only needed a single instance, right? As the judge told the jurors and the prosecutors told the jurors, if they were convinced of just one, even if the rest of them were consensual, that would have been enough. Jury didn't believe that existed. Look, this is a classic, I would say, compromise verdict, but when you view it as a compromise, it doesn't quite do it justice at how big a win it is for Sean Combs.
And Elizabeth, as you're standing outside the courthouse right now, I know we just had video of members of Diddy's family leaving. This was not a trial where you saw like a Luigi Mangione crowd of supporters outside every day. What are you seeing right now with the news of these verdicts coming in?
Yeah, well, as you guys can see behind me, I don't know if you can see behind me but we see a Cadillac Escalade or a Ford Escalade. I can't name what cars that is, but you see a large black SUV behind me. We have 2 vans behind me. The 2 Sprinter vans are obviously going to be holding in the Combs family. And all I can see right now, Chris, is just a crowd of people, both press and the public, just crowding around. Their cell phones are out. Their cameras are out. Some people are standing on what looks to be ladders, or at least kind of those metal barricades. And I see obviously some in security, some even kind of standing in the roadway. I hope they're not necessarily blocking any traffic, but I did hear an
I do want to pause and say I agree. Asia says, I fell in love with Elizabeth's reporting. Shout out to Elizabeth. They were calling her Queen Elizabeth on Law and Crime. She was there every single day, and she did a fantastic job.
Kind of explain when the family did come out. Obviously, everybody who's watching at home, Sean Combs is not coming outside of the courtroom at this moment right now. We do not see him or anything like that. He's still back in a holding cell while both sides kind of work out what they're going to be saying in their arguments later today about Sean Combs' bail application. But from what I could see, the SUV, the Sprinter van, it's crowded. It is a whole bunch of people really probably trying to get a glimpse of the Combs family, get their reaction after this verdict was read out loud today. And so it's really kind of a pretty packed scene outside there, as people are just waiting to see what the family's reaction is, as they are pretty pleased with today's verdict. Obviously, they would have liked probably for him to be acquitted on all counts, but in terms of just the verdict that was rendered today, it seems like the family is pretty pleased.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, Chris, I was just going to say that I think the answer to your question about why there's not this sort of groundswell of support out there is because he's admitting, his lawyer's admitting he did bad things, right? This isn't one of these cases. This isn't one of these cases where it's a question of did he do it or didn't he do it? We know he did it. We know he did really bad things here. The question is, did those really bad things fall into the legal definition of sex trafficking or racketeering? And the jury believes the answer is no. But that doesn't mean that he's going to get the kind of groundswell of support that someone who people believe is literally innocent, falsely accused, might get in a different kind of case.
And you've even seen it, Dan, I know you covered the O.J. trial. I mean, O.J. Simpson found not guilty, but no one up until his death had, for the most part, pretty glowing things to say about O.J. Simpson in hindsight of how that played out, even though there was a not guilty verdict. I'm just thinking of O.J. I think of Johnny Cochran, one of the great defenses of all time. As you've covered a lot of high-profile cases, where does the defense that Sean Combs got in this case rank?
Well, look, it was a very good defense, but they also had good legal arguments to make. I mean, they had the fact that Cassie and Jane were in these long-term relationships with him. They had the text messages, which were very positive and at times glowing and loving, which I think helped him a lot. You had the fact that racketeering is a complicated case where you need more than one person, you need more than one crime, et cetera. So it's not really quite apples to apples, right? In a murder case as you had here.
And then just lastly,
Chris. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll let you go. Law and Crime founder and CEO Dan Abrams, always good to have.
Shout out to Law and Crime. I'm not done because there's some more reporting from them, but I did want to answer this question. Heather, I saw this question a few times from our video earlier today. If you guys are just joining us, we gave you an update since the breaking news this morning that Diddy has been acquitted of some of the most serious charges in his federal trial. However, he is still facing two convictions in regards to the Mann Act, the transportation for prostitution. So Heather says, will Diddy have to register as an S offender? So, I had to do a little research. And again, we shall see, because remember, he could also be pardoned. I don't know if that will change that fact. He could also appeal these convictions. We haven't talked about that possibility. Okay. So, I had to do a little research in regards to this. And according to our friends over at ChatGPT, yes, he could have to register. He said, yes, under federal law, Sean Diddy Combs will be required to register as an S offender following his conviction under the Mann Act. They said federal sex crimes convictions, including those involving the transportation of individuals across state lines for prostitution, trigger mandatory registration under the S Offender Registration and Notification Act, SORNA. SORNA requires that individuals convicted of federal sex offenses register in the National S Offender Registry prior to their release and update their details when they move. So here's why it applies to Diddy. As you know, he was convicted today on 2 counts under the Mann Act for transporting individuals for prostitution. The Mann Act falls under definitions of federal sex crimes triggering SORNA registration rule. What this means in practice, Diddy will be obligated to register with the S Offender Registry in every jurisdiction where he resides or works, including New York, Miami, Los Angeles. His registration status must be maintained and updated for the duration specified by federal and state law. Failure to comply may result in additional criminal penalties. So I saw a lot of people asking that question. So this is what they're reporting, but we shall see. We shall see, because, again, they're still talking about possibly DT pardoning him. They're talking about appeal. So we shall see. All right, let me continue in regards to our friends over at Law and Crime talking about the update today.
Thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Great to be here.
Elizabeth,
great job, guys. Appreciate it.
We appreciate that.
Elizabeth, great coverage in the courtroom, too. Love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Elizabeth, I will go to you right now. Let's break down these arguments here, because you have Diddy's defense is saying that he should go home today, that this is not guilty on the majority of the counts, the most serious counts. He should walk out of here. The prosecution is not saying that. As you take a live look at the media that is outside of the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. What can we expect today when it comes to the arguments for what happens next to Sean Combs?
Well, what we can expect is that the defense is going to really be adamant about letting Sean Combs out today. He has a lot of money to post what they have been proposed as a $1 million bail, have some of his family members be able to kind of co-sign off that, and for him to just walk out of that courthouse today. I have to kind of really emphasize that today. He did not want to go back to MDC. Whenever the judge was like, I am sure that Sean Combs doesn't want to go back to MDC, he was shaking his head over at the defense table. A lot of people were kind of chuckling in the gallery today. But as far as just like the arguments that the defense initially made, Mark Agnifilo making these arguments as his voice was shaking a little bit, probably because he was pretty happy with the verdict. He stood up and he was like, he should be released on conditions. He should be able to return to Star Island in Florida. And Mark Agnifilo saying that we still have his passport, that being Tinny Garagos and Mark Agnifilo, but if he is released on bail conditions, that they should be able to return that passport over to pretrial services. They really were talking about how Sean Combs has been acquitted on sex trafficking, on RICO conspiracy. They even pointed out that his plane is currently in Maui, Hawaii, and that he doesn't have access to his plane. And so Mark Agnifilo says his family can sign onto the bond. Again, they were proposing $1 million. He should be released today. And their proposal was that Sean Combs could walk out of the courtroom and that his travel be limited to Florida, Los Angeles, and New York City. Whereas the government opposed that application. Maureen Comey making these arguments on behalf of the prosecution. The government was saying that Mark Agnifilo was really kind of downplaying Sean Combs' conviction, because everyone, just remember, he is still convicted on 2 counts. That, again, we have to kind of emphasize, being transportation to engage in prostitution, also known as the Mann Act. The government also pointing out there's been extensive testimony regarding drugs throughout this trial. They also point back to the day of his arrest, or the evening of his arrest, when he was caught at the hotel with drugs inside his hotel room, red lighting equipment, something that they say kind of alludes to that there might have been a hotel night or a freak-off occurring at the time that he was arrested. The prosecution also pointing out that his conviction suggests that he should be detained and that the defendant should be detained until sentencing. And so the judge asked, do you have any kind of case law about someone being held on a Mann Act charge pending sentencing? Maureen Comey says for the most part it had to relate to children, and so she didn't have anything in relation to adults being transported over state lines. So she's going to look up that case law. Obviously, the defense is going to come back. They're going to have their arguments, probably kind of what we had heard earlier. So they're going to take a few hours to kind of work everything out. They're going to send back a letter or an email, and then we'll all kind of reconvene early this afternoon to discuss what's going to be happening next. But no, Sean Combs did not walk out of that courtroom, everyone. He is still being held inside the courthouse right behind me. It seems like, from what I could tell, his family kind of probably maybe went to go celebrate or something like that, maybe go get a bite to eat, probably really take in that it's possible their father might be coming home today. But again, it's possible. Nothing set in stone just yet.
And we just have a statement coming in from the lawyer for Cassandra Ventura.
Okay, that's from our friends over at Law and Crime. We did read the statement from Doug Wigdorf from Cassie Ventura. We also read to you the letters that Cassie's attorney and Deontay Nash sent to the judge asking the judge not to permit bail for Diddy. As you know, there will be a bail hearing at 5 p.m. Eastern today. Wanted to give you some more updates from our friends over at NBC News in regards to the breaking news today that Sean Diddy Combs' trial is officially basically over. The jury came back with 2 convictions, and the rest of the charges, the most serious charges in regards to racketeering, conspiracy, and trafficking, they found him not guilty. He was facing a minimum, I think, 15 years with the trafficking charges and maximum life in prison. And one of the statements that Diddy said once the verdict was read was that he whispered, I don't know if he whispered, he said to his family, "I'm coming home, baby." Sir, and mind you, at this particular point, we don't know that. Not yet, at least. We don't know that. I did want to highlight what some of you guys were saying. Again, this is why law is so interesting. Thank you, Soso, for this. Soso says an attorney panel that included a former judge on Don Lemon's show said that he would not have to register as an S offender. I find that to be interesting. I wonder why not. I guess we will have to wait and see. I would like to hear the explanation on why he wouldn't, even though he's been convicted of the Mann Act. But I would love to hear the explanation on that. I'll ask Kirsten as well for that in regards to the perspective on why he would not have to register. Hold on, I froze. Please hold. Ugh. And we were doing so good. Not freezing. All right, but it's a live show. But that's okay. You guys could still hear me, and the most important is that you guys can hear me. All right, I do want to say, Asia, thank you so much for the super chat. Asia says, Kempire, I watched you and Law and Crime. You did an excellent job. Glad I wasn't a juror. I just say, buyer beware if he comes out. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Asia. I appreciate that. And shout out to our friends over at Law and Crime Network. Shout out to our friends over at Inner City Press and the coverage that they were doing. Mona Abdi on TikTok and her reporting CBS News. NBC News, we've been utilizing a lot as well. All right. Let me see. In regards to NBC continues in their report that Combs' best friend, Charlie Lucci, was overjoyed and said jurors got it right. Everybody's happy that the jury got it right, he told reporters outside the court. It restores faith back into the justice system. He said that the not guilty verdicts brought him to tears. He said, I cried because that's my brother up there on trial. And you may have seen him. I believe he was more wearing like the Free Diddy stuff, but today he's in a suit with a bow tie. All right. So the courtroom had opened up for 20 minutes after 1 p.m. deadline for both sides to submit their arguments on Combs' release. His defense argued that he should be released to his Miami home with conditions that included a $1 million secured bond now that he's no longer charged with trafficking. Prosecutors disagreed vehemently, arguing that Combs spent years violating the law and risked that he's going to commit more crimes. The judge asked them to each submit letters for the arguments that he would consider in the afternoon. All right. Thank you, Tanya, so much for gifting memberships to our crew in the live chat. We appreciate that. Thank you to be sure to thank Tanya Teles. Thank you so much, Tanya. We appreciate your support. Thank you. Guys, keep liking the video. That's a easy and free way of supporting our channel. Don't forget, you can also hear a lot of our content and our Diddy updates on the Kempire podcast. While you're there, don't forget to give us a 5-star review. And of course, I'm coming to Philadelphia July 10th. We're doing the Kempire After Dark, the villain era. I will be talking about this Diddy trial. I'll be talking about Real Housewives. I'll be talking about whatever is in pop culture at the moment. So we're coming to Philly City Winery July 10th. That's next Thursday. Go get your tickets. More ticket information is available in the description. Then we're coming to Atlanta, we're coming August 5th at the City Winery there. Then we're coming back to DC this summer, August 22nd at the Union Stage. And finally, we'll have another New York City show here on September 12th. All shows have meet and greets available. So if you want to meet and greet and take pictures and talk and kiki and talk about this Diddy of it all, we can do that. And don't forget, the New York City show has a live stream option. The live stream option means that you can watch this from wherever. Foxy's all the way in Sweden, Foxy, all the way over there, and you can watch our live show So, and again, what we talk about in Philly or Atlanta or DC won't be what we will be talking about come September in New York City. So get your tickets today. More information is available in the description. Alexa says that I'm coming. I see you on the 5th. See you on the 5th in Atlanta. All right. And more information on everything Kempire, from merch to Cameo and all that stuff. The podcast stuff is available there as well. All right. All right. Let's continue with this. And then I'm going to sign off for a little bit. Maybe. We'll see. But the hearing is happening at 5 p.m. But I'll gather some notes in regards to whether or not Diddy will be continuing his time at MDC or being set free this evening. So they said that the courtroom, we read through that. All right. So they said, prosecutors said that they will ask for Combs to be sentenced to consecutive 10-year terms, the maximum time for his 2 guilty counts. But how much time he spends in prison remains to be seen. Consecutive sentences are rare, and any sentence handed down against Combs would include 9 months he's already spent in jail awaiting the just concluded trial. All right. Oh, let me show you this picture, guys. There's a picture. So a courtroom deputy reads the verdicts before U.S. district judge. So this is Diddy in court earlier today. What I've learned is that a lot of the prosecutors and sometimes the defense will buy these sketches because it's like a very high profile case, and there are no pictures, there are no audio or video in regards to this case. So a lot of times they'll buy these sketches. Let me show you. This is one of the sketches of Diddy in court today as they were reading the verdict. Okay, Diddy. All right. Carlisa says, yes, go eat and come back. Thank you. I will. I don't know if I'll be eating because I just ate right before this one, but yeah. Oh, and here's another image I want to show you guys of Diddy in court. And for those that are listening to the podcast version of this, you can see it on YouTube. But this particular image, you can see Diddy with the prayer hands up in the air, looking up in the air. And for those that were confused, we talked about this several times in covering this case in regards to no cameras being allowed in court. A lot of the reporters and journalists that have been going in, they have to turn in all their devices. However, shout out to Inner City Press, they were allowed to keep their device in order to report some of the conversations that were coming out from court. I believe that they only allow lawyers to bring those devices in. All right. According to NBC News, they said the Combs verdict threatens to undo the sacrifice of those who came forward to testify to the abuse they endured, according to a statement from Ultraviolet, a national women's advocacy organization. Interim director Arisha Hatch said that the group stands with the brave women and men who took the stand to reveal who Combs really is. Combs was acquitted on the top charges of trafficking and racketeering, but convicted on the lower charges regarding transportation for prostitution. Today's verdict is not just a stain on a criminal justice system that for decades has failed to hold accountable abusers like Diddy. It's also an indictment of culture in which not believing women and victims of SA remains an endemic. One thing I will tell you guys to go watch, because I'm a TV connoisseur, but there's a docuseries on Netflix called Worst Ex Ever. And besides it just giving you these crazy stories of these relationships, the thing that stood out to me was our domestic violence laws in this country and how, if they were better, it would have prevented a lot of crimes and deaths that happen in those stories. So if you haven't seen it, it would be worth going to watch and understanding why our country needs to do better when it comes to domestic violence and how it's litigated. So that was one of the statements. Combs' attorneys formalized their request to have Combs released on a secured $1 million bond co-signed by his mother, sister, and eldest daughter. Their letter to the court insists that Combs had been a model prisoner over the last several months and poses no flight risk. They asked for a bail package that would include Combs agreeing to surrender his passport to pretrial services and restricting his travel to Florida, California, New York, and New Jersey. Why does he need to go to any of those places? How about we restrict it to Miami? To Florida, if that's where he's going to be staying. Stay at one house. You don't need to go to California. Your attorneys can come there. Maybe that will be included depending on what the judge decides. And then New York, because he has to come come to New York because of this case. Mr. Combs stands convicted of 2 man counts, and his sentencing exposure is substantially lower than when the government initially sought detention, the letter said. The court should release Mr. Combs on the proposed conditions. That was the letter from the court. So, reminded Judge Subramanian set Combs' bail hearing for 5 p.m. today. So, if the defendant does get out of jail, it probably won't happen until later today, literally an hour from now. The government is seeking to keep Combs in custody until his sentencing. Prosecutors will seek roughly 4 to 5 years for prison. So, this is why people are saying if he is convicted of this, he could literally still walk because he's already served almost a year in prison. Combs is looking at a dramatically less time in prison than prosecutors previously wanted to pursue, according to a letter submitted to the court to keep him detained. While Comey previously told the court that they would be seeking a maximum of 20 years in prison combined on 2 counts, the letter now says that the sentencing guidelines range from 51 to 63 months. The prosecution also argues in the letter that Combs is not entitled to release on bond, which would be a good question to ask Kirsten as well. Kirsten, if you're watching this, our legal eagle for the channel, she's been here 3 times already talking about this case, the legality of this case. I'm interested to why now in this letter they're now only seeking 4 to 5 years prison time. They said the sentencing guidelines range from 51 to 63 months. U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton argued that Combs assaulted one of the victims, Jane, while he knew that he was under investigation. Even if detention was not mandatory here, which it is, the defendant cannot meet his burden to show by clear and convincing evidence that he is not likely to flee or pose a danger to any other person or the community, the letter said. All right, so several of Combs' children left the courthouse again ahead of the 5 p.m. bail hearing. They said that former stylist Deontay Nash, we read his letter for those that may have missed it a little bit earlier on, but here's a snippet of what was said in it. Many of us have firsthand knowledge of the fear he instills in those around him. Nash said in a letter submitted today by prosecutors, I can say without hesitation that he is a serious and immediate threat to victims, witnesses, and the broader community. His pattern of violence, particularly while engaged in trafficking of individuals for prostitution, combined with unchecked substance abuse, makes it clear that he's not ready to re-enter society safely or responsibly. That was Deontay Nash. All right. So Cassie's attorney asked the judge to reject Combs' release. Attorney Doug Wigdor, which we read his letter as well. In his letter, he said it referenced part of the Bail Reform Act to say the detention is, quote, mandatory after convictions of the Mann Act charge. So remember, Cassie's attorney was saying that based off of this law, it's mandatory that he remain in detention. All right. Grammy-nominated singer Kesha came to Cassie Ventura's side, calling her a beacon for every survivor. Combs' videotape beating of Ventura and her lawsuit against him were linchpins in the government's prosecution of the music mogul, which ended this morning with 2 convictions and 3 acquittals. Kesha wrote on Twitter saying, Cassie, I believe you. I love you. Your strength is a beacon for every survivor. Okay. All right. We're going to wrap it up there. I do see we have a few people backstage that want to weigh in. I'm just going to take calls from our members. Sorry, general audience, but we're limited on time, and I think we will go live again when we figure out whether or not they're going to allow Diddy bail today. His bail hearing is at 5 p.m. Okay? All right. Cookie Dough is backstage. We're going to, or Cookie Dough, I guess? Cookie Dough? What's going on?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I just wanted to say that because I do have personal experience with like similar things civilly and both criminally. And it's very disheartening to see how people think and talk lightly of such grave situations and not think about the people involved and the people who are experiencing things, or people who maybe not involved but have similar experiences like myself. And that people have to understand, even if you did everything right, and I mean, if you report it immediately, you go to the hospital, you tell the police, you press charge, even when you do everything right, justice is very, very few and far in between. And I know this because I've done it civilly and I'm doing it criminally. And we do not have a perfect system. And in fact, we have a very broken system right now. And it does not serve anybody justice. And I don't really know what could fix it because it wasn't really made for us in the first place. It was made before people were even considered human beings. And so I think we need a huge revision. And it's just sad to see just common people talk about it so lightly and not, it's there's nothing to celebrate here.
Yeah.
Irregardless, there's nothing to celebrate here. And I just hope that we as people can move away from the ignorance that we see in the media that we partake in, as far as when stuff is legal and serious like this. They're true victims and people who don't feel comfortable to come forward. And I'm curious. The most thing I'm curious about is why did they play their hand the way they did? Because a lot of times they don't try to overcharge, and I do think they overcharge based on the lineup that they had. And I can't remember who it was, if it was Dawn Richards or Michelle, who said that they could have brought better witnesses and better people. And I do know that they will subpoena you, but if you have enough power, they won't subpoena if you really, really don't want to. They will not do that. And so if it's not necessary. So I do wonder why did they choose the people that they chose? And if they had any male victims or any other people that chose not to come forward, they feel like they didn't need it. I do feel like they overcharged a bit. And I think that, I don't know if that was strategic or what, but I'm just curious as to why they did that.
All right. Cookie Dough, thank you so much for calling in. All right. We have Cynthia back. So Cynthia's calling back. Cynthia, what did you want to share in regards to our update when it comes to this Diddy trial? It's over, but it's still playing out.
Yeah. Hi, Kempire. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, the trial is over. Kempire, you know what? These are just my thoughts. It's really, really tough being a woman in today's society. This is just my opinion. I will speak on it. You know, my parents are migrants from Nigeria, and also, I mean, honestly, if you think that the United States is bad, third world countries are honestly worse. Everything is your fault. I remember when my aunt was abused by her ex-husband, my dad asked her, what did you do? I mean, honestly, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, it is what it is. Like the previous caller said, it's not a victory in my personal opinion, but, I pray for the victims and I hope they find peace and calm and, throughout everything. But it's honestly a slap in the face.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is, Kempire, so.
Well, I appreciate you calling in.
Yep. Thanks, Kempire.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. All right, we're going to take one more caller. Miss Esquire is backstage. We're going to bring Miss Esquire up in just a second. Just a reminder, guys, if you haven't already, be sure to like the video. Be sure to thank our mods for holding us down for this very long live. We've already been talking over an hour and a half. We were live earlier today when we had the breaking news about this Sean Diddy Combs verdict. So if you missed that video, be sure to check that one out as well, or check out our playlist in covering this since day one of this trial. All right, let's bring Miss Esquire up next. Miss Esquire, what are your thoughts on today's developments when it comes to this Diddy trial?
Hi, Kempire. How are you?
I'm okay. I'll just say that I'm okay.
I feel very disappointed in the verdict. I think that's what everybody's feeling. And I'm very interested when you talk to Kristen later. I do have a couple questions for her because her area is so specific to this kind of work.
Yeah.
I really think the jury verdict form that they use might have been a real issue in this particular case. The way that it was laid out in terms of, count one on the RICO conspiracy and having to list the acts that they thought were committed. And that part of the form also asked them if they found him guilty on count one, did the pattern of racketeering involve the sex trafficking of both Cassie Ventura and Jane Doe?
Yeah.
And I specifically want to hear if she thinks the inclusion of those two things in count one may have been an issue for them finding the sex trafficking counts later. When I saw the verdict form, I was like, oh man, that they may think that, oh, if we can't find him guilty on the racketeering, then we can't find him guilty on the sex trafficking, although it's listed differently. And I'm sure, they did a good job, the prosecution, in trying to explain the verdict form or get instructions in that the judge would be willing to say. But that was one thing I'm just like, I wonder if this is an issue of them really not feeling that if they didn't find the racketeering, that they couldn't find the sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Because it's very strange to me that they found both the Mann Act violations for transportation, and that also includes a finding that there was either prostitution or criminal sex acts, but they didn't find trafficking. And I just don't, until we have one of the jurors come out and talk, we won't really know what their thinking was.
If
but
they
I'd
will,
love to know
too. We don't know if they will.
Yeah, and you don't know if they will, because who would want to subject themselves to that man's abuse? But that was one thought I had for Kristen. So if you can talk to her about like the verdict form.
Yeah.
And I think that, my understanding is that the Mann Act, unless there's minors involved, does not come with a automatic requirement to register as a sex offender.
Oh, okay.
And there was no allegations here of minors being trafficked or transported. Okay. But I'd like her to tell me if I'm wrong about that. That was my understanding.
Apparently, a few people in the chat said that a couple of other attorneys that were a part of Don Lemon's live, a former judge said that he probably wouldn't. But so it might be because of that element in regards to no children being involved.
Yeah, I think it is because of that element, but I'd love her to tell me if there have been circumstances where a judge has still determined that there should be a sex offender registry.
Yeah.
Because sex offender registries are not just when there's sexual abuse of children, that it can happen when there's also sexual abuse of adults. So I'd love her to tell me, but I didn't think it was an automatic thing if you were found guilty, unfortunately.
Okay.
The other thing I'd love for you to talk to her about, because I think this might be a silver lining if there is any in this case, is now that he's been convicted of two Mann Act violations, if he has any other sexual offenses, those could be his prior convictions now could be an enhancement for any future crimes that he commits of a sexual nature. And those enhancements would make his sentencing a lot more severe on any future sexual offenses. So now that he's been convicted of crimes of a sexual nature, even though it's just a transportation, my understanding is those could be the basis for enhancements if he were to commit any similar crimes in the future. And I say that because maybe the silver lining is that could serve as a deterrent for him to engage in any further sex crimes. And that may be what can, that can maybe keep people safe. His idea that, okay, if I get caught like this again and I have these convictions, then I really can, be up for 25 years. Or if it involves a child, my understanding is those enhancements could make him subject to a life sentence. So maybe that's, my arms are tired from reaching for the silver lining situation.
Well, the other thing that we have to keep in mind, too, based on the previous conversations that we've had with Kirsten, a lot of what they were doing during the trial was, I do believe they're going to appeal those convictions.
Yeah. I'm sure they are going to appeal those convictions.
I don't know the likelihood, though.
I don't either. And the thing that bothers me about the convictions, and I'm not going to go into a lot of this because I know you've been on here forever, but, the Mann Act has really difficult origins as a law. And I'm sure you talked about this before, that it was originally designed as a law to protect white women and girls. And it was really aimed at preventing Black men, honestly, from taking white women across state lines and during the time when we had laws against interracial relationships and marriages. And it never even contemplated men until I think the late 70s, when it became a genderless crime and it was the trafficking of any person. And what I don't like about what the conviction communicates is, I feel like, and I hope I can say this in a way that makes sense, I feel like they're almost calling Cassie and Jane Doe prostitutes and not calling them sex trafficked victims. And that's what really bothers me about it. Because as you just talked about a moment ago, the transportation charge is about the fact that they're saying, hey, there was consensual commercial sex here, we think, but that transportation for consensual commercial sex is not legal. So that's what we're going to punish you for. And it's like, this was not consensual commercial sex. And I don't know how the jurors listened to the evidence and thought that for Cassie and for Jane Doe specifically, but also for some of these sex workers that were involved, that it continued to be consensual commercial sex, which I do think we should have a certain respect for, right? Sex work is work, and people who want to do that work should be allowed to do it, and it should be regulated so they can do it safely. These people were being kept there for days.
Yeah.
Forced to have sex for days, forced to engage with drugs for days to the point of exhaustion. That is not your typical prostitution or sex crime. It's really not. And so, again, I really do struggle to see what this communicates to victims of those kind of crimes. I'm happy he was convicted of something. Like, I'm not gonna, be ungrateful for that. But I really do struggle with them finding the transportation charges and not the trafficking charges. Because I think the trafficking charges would have gone a long way, in my opinion, to validate Cassie and Jane Doe's experience and the experience of the sex workers who were also involved.
Yeah, without doubt. You know that they're having a hearing at 5 p.m. And I explained some of why he might still be detained versus why he might not be detained. You probably also heard some of the letters that were sent. What's your reaction to the possibility that he might be free today?
I think I would like to think that it's more likely that he will remain in prison until he is sentenced, but the sentence will be like expedited. The sentencing hearing will happen very quickly.
Because they're only seeking 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, they're only seeking 4 to 5 years. And to me, there's no point in him getting out and then having to go back in. Like, that's just a lot of rigmarole. He's going to get credit for the additional days or weeks that he serves. And to me, he is now a criminally convicted person. He should be removed from society until he gets his sentencing. And all appeals that happen are going to have to wait until after the sentencing is done. So I can see his lawyers, if they lose on the bail hearing, which I hope they do and I think they will, then I can see them, filing for an expedited sentencing hearing.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Ms. Escobar, this is why we always love when you call in, so we appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you for covering this. And I hope that you're taking care of yourself because, like I've told you before, this information, it's not just an intellectual exercise. It's also an emotional one, and it's laborsome. I know from the legal work I do, taking in all these facts and circumstances is not easy. So take care of yourself and take care of your heart while you're engaging with all this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Ms. Esquire, you'll be rounding out our conversation this evening, so we appreciate you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye. Perfect timing for us to take a little bit of break. We'll stay tuned. Stay tuned. No promises that I will go live, but it depends. It depends on what will happen at 5 p.m. There is a 5 p.m. bail hearing for Sean Diddy Combs. If you missed any of what we've covered today, be sure to check out our breaking story video from this morning and check out, if you're watching the replay of this, everything that we discussed in here. We discussed a lot. Thank you to our King's Guards, our moderators in the live chat. Shout out to our channel members, and some of you are new members. Be sure to check out all of the content for our members as well. And for those that are listening to the podcast version of this, don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And if you're not following us on the podcast, you should. Sometimes we have added extended versions. And again, if I don't go live, I might add to the podcast version us talking about the bail hearing. So make sure you are subscribed to our podcast. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to everyone that sent in Super Chats, Venmos, Cash Apps. All of that is greatly appreciated. And for everyone that sent in a like, we appreciate it. Don't forget to keep liking the video if you're watching the replay. Thank you guys. Everyone have a great rest of your afternoon. Stay tuned. I might go live again. Make sure your notifications are on. See you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching and for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to Kempire here on the Kempire Radio Network. As always, you can hear Kempire on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. More information can be found on KempireRadio.com.
Lowe's knows July 4th savings are worth celebrating. Right now, get up to 40% off select major appliances and get an additional 10% off 2 or more select major appliances. Plus, get 3 Scott's Naturescapes 1.5 cubic foot mulch bags for just $10. These deals are coming in hot. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 7/9. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details. Excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
If you're a podcast host, listen up. This one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle. And I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.